Welcome to today's edition of the Rush 24/7 podcast.
Well, it's now official. Panic has set in. Panic has set in maybe in both establishments, but certainly the Republican establishment. Panic is now official. And it's all because up until last night, everything was theoretical. But now, Trump won, and he outperformed the polling. But before you get too crazy, I want to remind you of something. People are talking about a revolution going on out there, and I can understand why people might be saying so when you look at Bernie Sanders over Hillary and Trump coming in out of nowhere and dominating the Republican side. I don't know about a revolution. I mean, it's tempting and it's exciting to think that a revolution's going on, but I'm not so sure. Do you know that Mitt Romney got a higher percentage of the primary vote in New Hampshire in 2012 than Trump got last night? Romney got 39.3%. Trump got 35%. Does that equal revolution? Now, don't misunderstand me here, folks. Don't go off half crazy on me yet here. We still have 3 hours here to make sense of everything, and we will. And if there was a revolution going on, would Trump have not won Iowa? I'm not saying that it's not real. Let me cut to the chase. I really think what's going on here on the Republican side, and it's been the case for the past 7 years, the explanation for all of this is the fact on the Republican side. The explanation for all of it. It's not complicated. The Republican Party has not pushed back against Obama. The Republican Party has not tried to stop one shred of this. Not really. I mean, you have to emphasize it. They haven't even hardly made a pretense of trying to stop any of this. So what you have is a genuine outrage at the Republican Party. But does that mean people out there want to overturn the entire system in a revolutionary way and go with it? I don't know that that's the case. But clearly the Republican Party's being rejected. The Republican Party establishment's being rejected. You go over to the Democrat side. Folks, I made it a point to listen to Bernie Sanders and Hillary last night. I think one of the things that happens in the primary season is that, and I think it's true of both parties, you really ignore the other party because you have your own internecine battles going on, and the immediate objective is to win the nomination of your party, which means win the contests against your fellow party members. And what the other party is doing kind of gets shunted off to the side. You deal with that later this year, get into summertime. And I think that is a mistake, because I think what's happening on the Democrat side should be a dominant part of the Republican primary process here, because it was stunning to listen to these two people last night. It was scary and it was stunning, and I'll tell you what else it was. It was the Limbaugh theorem on parade like never before. Both of these people, Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton, stood up there, and Fox carried both of this. Was kind of sad. I have to tell you, I have to interrupt myself here. Fox is trying to cover every candidate's speech to supporters at the end of the night, and they're trying to be fair about it. And no sooner had they gone to Jeb Bush, I'm talking 30 seconds, they had to bump out and go to Trump. And if it didn't just symbolize this entire campaign, Jeb was out talking about some guy that was trying to get seed money to start a business and all the regulations he was having to go through. And 30 seconds into that, I'm sorry, we now leave Jeb Bush and we move over to Trump headquarters. And that was it. And that was it for Jeb. He got 30 seconds of his speech. Hillary got all of it. Bernie got all of his. And Bernie's was 30 minutes. But the Limbaugh theorem, here are these two people who have made the last 7 years possible. They are the architects, along with Barack Hussein Obama. They have voted for every dime of it. They have supported everything. To listen to these people criticize the healthcare system with 29 million people still uninsured, and to complain about the costs, the rising premiums and the deductibles, and to hear them talk about unemployment, and to hear them talk about low wage. Who do they think is responsible for this? And, of course, their supporters, many of these young college graduate leftists who have been really brainwashed into the beauties and fairness and all that of socialism, it's a potential crisis that we face because these young people have not been taught critical thinking. They literally have been taught the virtues of socialism. I mean, to listen to these people, to listen to an avowed socialist like Bernie Sanders talk about how angry he is at what's going on now when it's everything in the world that he wanted in 2008. Ditto Hillary Clinton. What is there to be unhappy about? No, folks, follow me on this. I'm dead serious. They get everything they want. There was no pushback on the Republican side. There was no attempt to stop it. First 2 years, they didn't have the votes to stop it anyway. And after they did acquire the votes, after we gave them the House and gave them the Senate, they still made no serious effort to stop it. And even at that, Obama's had to use some executive orders to get what he wants, but he has done it. There's no stopping him. There's no attempt to stop. There's no pretense. There's no image other than during campaigns where they tell us they're going to stop him, but then they don't. And to listen to these two people go on and on about the status quo as though we are about finished, as though we are in dire straits, our consequences have never been more grave, and we need to do what? We need more of what has brought us here. We need more of what we've had to live through the last 7 years. It's like these two people got to stand up there and act like they had nothing to do with it. The Limbaugh theorem on parade, like Obama, the way he gets away with stuff is that he gets away with appearing to have no role in any of it. He gets to pretend to be an outsider, angry at what's going on, fighting powerful, invisible forces, i.e. Republicans. He's going to do everything he can to stop it. He's the architect of all this. The Democrat Party is the architect of all this. They're miserable. They're unhappy. They've gotten everything they want the last 7 years. How in the world does this work? We haven't done enough. We haven't spent enough. We haven't given away enough. We don't have a big enough welfare state. We didn't take over health care enough. We didn't take over health care the right way. What in the world's wrong with it? You got everything you wanted. There was no attempt to stop Obamacare. They got everything they wanted in it. And to listen to these two people whine and moan and complain, you would think that all of this is the result of the Iraq War and the Bush administration, and it's time we got serious and reversed this course that we're on. It was stunning to me. I really think of the candidates remaining on the Republican side, they had better start listening to this, and they had better start including it, because this is what we're ultimately running against. And it all goes back. The reason all of this upheaval is happening on the Republican side is precisely because there has been no effort on the part of the Republican Party, its establishment, wherever, to stop any of this. It makes common sense, total common sense, that people who have loyally donated and loyally voted and supported and have been told that they must support the nominee, they must support the policies, party unity and all that, they've been slapped upside the head one too many times here. And so they're now saying, screw you. And they're going elsewhere. Now, the crazy thing is the Democrats have their own version of this going on. I mean, Bernie Sanders supporters are just Obama supporters. I mean, it's almost the exact demographic. We go through all this. I mean, Hillary was humiliated yesterday. What is it, 22-point loss? She lost virtually every group. Trump on his side won every demographic. It's uncanny. Every demographic group, Trump wins and wins big. And Hillary lost practically every demographic group. Bernie Sanders today went to Sylvia's in Harlem to have breakfast with Al Sharpton. Bernie knows that he's out of this race once we get to South Carolina. The Clinton machine is going to kick in. The New Hampshire population doesn't in any way mirror what the Democrats and Republicans are going to find in South Carolina. And Bernie knows this. That's why his first stop was Al Sharpton. Bernie's only hope is to promise reparations. the only way he has a chance of wresting the black vote away from Hillary Clinton. That's what makes this kind of comical. I mean, to look at the leftist establishment media, they're in panic. Oh, my God, Hillary can lose Nevada. Oh, gee, Hillary, oh, my God, South Carolina, Hillary's firewall. They're upset because what we have is a repetition of exactly what happened in 2008. What's obviously clear to them on their side is that their voters just do not like this woman. And they know they're relatively certain Bernie Sanders isn't going to be the nominee. It just doesn't work out for him. Just like it doesn't work out for Kasich. I mean, Kasich was a one-off. He won in... That's nothing. The attention paid to the second, third, and fourth place finishers last night in the media was stunning. I'd never seen that much attention paid to people second, third, and fourth, because Trump ran away with it. And so that was the only drama there was, and then what that all meant. And Kasich coming in second place makes sense, the only place he's been campaigning. He's been going to town halls. He's been going to diners. He had to say the other day that he's further left than Hillary Clinton. He had to say the other day that he's effectively a Democrat here. And he's running around acting like one. Well, we go to South Carolina where he doesn't have any infrastructure in place and so forth. Whereas people like Ted Cruz have been planning for South Carolina and the SEC primary Super Tuesday on March 1st since the get-go of this. But on the Democrat side, they're panicked because it's abundantly clear again that Democrat voters, when they have the chance to vote against Hillary, will do it. They don't like her. She is not liked. She is not popular. She does not have that famous connection with people that I talk about. The drive-bys are so out of whack. The Huffing and Puffington Post, in their cover today, just dumps all over the voters of New Hampshire as a bunch of xenophobic, racist, bigot, other names I can't mention, but they're so ticked. The New York Daily News, Dawn of the Brain Dead, with a picture of Trump on the cover as the Joker from Batman. So when the media starts insulting and blaming the voters as being stupid idiots, you know that full-fledged panic has set in. Because this means that they are unable to control the outcome. And that is what the media lost when they lost their monopoly, their inability now to control the outcome, to control the message, to control how people vote, to control what people think, to control what people's opinions are. It's all out the window, and everybody that considers themselves to be part of the establishment is facing a major, big-time rejection today. On the Republican side, this would not be happening had there been some official, real, serious, consistent pushback to Obama. Now, it didn't happen, so I don't want to sit here and play what if. That's not what I'm doing. I'm offering you an explanation for why. In other words, I don't, folks, we have these people talking about whether there's populism and nationalism overtaking conservatism, and I don't think we're there yet. The support for Trump is said to be, outside all known categories. It's outside conservatism, it's outside liberalism, it's outside libertarianism, it's outside moderates, it's outside independents. It's a new area, and so but it may well be, but it's made up of people from across the spectrum who are just, they're fed up. There's not an opposition party. Had there been an opposition party these past 7 years to invest in, they would have. Had there been an opposition party that was serious about it, this would be an entirely different primary circumstance scenario. But it isn't, and it is what it is. So we'll follow this along, and it's satisfying in a Schadenfreude kind of way to read some of the establishment reaction and to listen to them on television. But again, the Bernie Sanders acceptance speech and what Hillary tried to do in hers, it's just above and beyond the Limbaugh theorem aspects of it. I mean, I don't know how much ground there is to gain by pointing out to people that have been educated into the virtues of socialism to illustrate, hey, wait a minute, these people are complaining about stuff they did. Does that not register with you? I don't know how powerful that is. In years past, I was of the opinion it was very powerful as a persuasive technique. Hey, wait a minute, did you hear Bernie complain about health care? Yeah, wasn't it great? Well, except they did it. Everything he's complaining about, he voted for. Everything he complained about, he supported. 7 years ago, Bernie Sanders said that what we have now was nirvana. Bernie Sanders, Hillary Clinton 7 years ago all told us this was going to be utopia. We're finally going to take our country back, they said. They're the ones we've been waiting for. They're going to do all this wonderful stuff. And they've done it. They've implemented their agenda more rapidly and thoroughly than any leftist in this country ever has. And everybody is unhappier than they ever have been. They're more miserable, and they're panicked, and they're scared, precisely because these people have succeeded. And these people are running around acting like they had nothing to do with it, and we need more of this. It is one of the greatest assaults on logic you will ever find. Sadly, logic is not in this equation. What Bernie says rings emotionally true. He wants healthcare to be cheaper. He wants whatever it is the hell he wants. And he's going to pay for it. How? He answered it. We're going to institute a 10% tax on Wall Street speculation. Wall Street speculation. What the heck is that? Wall Street speculation. Every trade, every time a 10%, the thing about that is, no, I know what it is. I was being rhetorical. What Wall Street speculation is mean every trade's a wild guess. Nobody knows what's going to happen to a stock. Everybody's speculating every time they buy or sell something. He wants a 10% tax on every purchase. Anyway, the big banks are the foundation of the Democrat Party. And Hillary and Bernie are both trashing the big banks left and right last night. I see it. I'll take a break here, folks. EIB Network at 800-282-2882. Stand by. Back before you know it. Hi. How are you? Welcome back. Great to have you. Rush Limbaugh here on the cutting edge of societal evolution. Do you know that Bernie Sanders is the first Jewish candidate to win a major presidential primary? You had heard that? You did. But here's the point. Hillary Clinton tried to stop the first African American from being elected president. Now she's trying to stop the first Jewish American from being elected president. What a bigot. Doesn't Mrs. Clinton realize she should get out of the way and let these minorities finally have their shot at things? She tried to stop the first black president. He won. Now she's trying to stop the first Jewish president, and he just mopped the floor with her. Do you want to know how screwed up the Democrat primary is? Hillary lost in New Hampshire. I don't even know if Bernie knows this yet. Somebody, if he doesn't know, somebody's going to have to tell him. Hillary Clinton loses by 22 points and got 2 more delegates than Bernie Sanders did last night. I'm not kidding you. Though Bernie Sanders, in the Daily Caller, though Bernie Sanders won the New Hampshire primary in a landslide over Hillary Clinton, he will receive fewer delegates than she will. Sanders won 60% of the vote, but thanks to the Democrat Party's nominating system, Bernie leaves New Hampshire with 13 delegates, max, well, at least 13, and Hillary leaves with 15. Now, what kind of system is that? You go in and you get skunked, you get schlonged, you get landslided out by 22 points, and you leave the state with 2 more delegates than Bernie. You know, Bernie's always talking about how this system's rigged and that system's rigged and everything else. The economy's rigged and Wall Street's rigged. Wait till he finds out that New Hampshire was rigged. His reaction is going, wait a minute. 60% of the votes, you got 38% of the vote. What do you mean? I got 2 fewer delegates. New Hampshire has 24 pledged delegates, which are allotted based on the popular vote. Sanders has 13, Clinton has 9. There are 2 currently allotted to neither, but under committee rules, DNC rules, New Hampshire has 8 super delegates and Hillary owns them. Don't you just love it? And we're back. Rush Limbaugh, the cutting edge of the societal evolution. 800-282-2882, the email address, lrushbo@eibnet.com. Let's review some of the coverage here to show you just exactly what happened last night before we hit the audio sound bites and get into your phone calls. As I said, the huffing and puffing and Post just went absolutely nuclear after Trump won last night. But by the way, the establishment on both sides has been rocked, but the Republican establishment, I think, was still living in a fantasy. Up until last night, they were still hoping something would happen, that Trump was not going to win this. It was all theoretical. Now, hard, cold reality has settled in, and there's abject panic. They don't know who to go to. They don't know who to line up behind. Doesn't look like Rubio is going to be able to do it. Oh, he's not finished, but they had high hopes. Do they want to try to marshal their forces behind Kasich? They may have no choice, because they will not go to Cruz. They despise Cruz and Trump equally. In fact, they may even despise Ted Cruz even more, and Cruz is the guy with the legitimate chance here as we go forward to wrest control of this from Trump. Christie, I think, is out. I don't know if he's made it official. I saw a couple headlines earlier that indicate that. So who is he going to endorse? That will be the next question that they try to solve. But anyway, the establishment don't know what to do now. Jeb, that's where all their eggs were. That's the basket. And Jeb just couldn't do it. And that's the symbolic way he was just cut away from after only 30 seconds of his speech last night. For Trump, just codified all of this in 30 seconds. It told the story of what's gone wrong here for the establishment in 30 seconds. So who do they see? The great thing for Trump here is that New Hampshire did not winnow the field. Other than Christie and Dr. Carson, he had 5 people quit his campaign this morning and join the Cruz campaign. So Dr. Carson is, for all intents and purposes, out. Fiorina. But none of them, other than Christie, have officially withdrawn. The field was not winnowed. Rubio's not going anywhere yet. Jeb is not going to go anywhere yet. Jeb's already making speeches in South Carolina. So the Trump phenomenon rolls on because his opposition is split. There is no single candidate for the opposition to Trump to unify behind. This was such a victory for Trump last night in so many different ways. And one of the big ones was that New Hampshire did not change the makeup. It did not make the field any smaller among those with legitimate, quasi-legitimate opposition to Trump. So he's sitting pretty. And he has a huge, he's been spending a lot of time in these southern states. He's been doing a lot of appearances and a lot of rallies, and so has Ted Cruz. The Huffington Puffington Post on the Democrats, they're just beside themselves. They cannot believe the voters are this stupid. Their cover story says that New Hampshire has gone racist, sexist, and xenophobic. They start blaming the voters, folks. When the left starts blaming voters, then they know, you know, that they are losing control. Now, let's look at exit polls versus the outcome on the Republican side. According to the exit polls, Trump won among men. He won among women. He won all age groups. He won all income groups. He won urban. He won suburban. He won rural. Every issue group, no matter what the issue is, he won it. Gun owners, non-gun owners, Second Amendment, anti-Second Amendment, he won them all. Voters who call themselves very conservative, Trump won them. Those who call themselves moderates, Trump won. Every group. This is exit polling. And he did it in ways that the establishment can't diminish. He did it in ways that they can't say, well, it's not real. Well, it's not phony. You know, they all tried to get Trump on the expectations game. Everything they tried to do to discredit Trump beforehand has blown up in their faces. They were relying on the fact that Trump did not win Iowa. So they're telling themselves, he's not real. If Trump was real, if this was really real, Trump would be 50% everywhere. This is what they're still telling themselves today in many cases. Now, the Washington Post. Donald Trump loves winning, and he won just about every group in New Hampshire. New Hampshire is a very different state from Iowa. It's a state with more independents, fewer conservatives, and fewer evangelicals. In Iowa, nearly two-thirds of Republicans identified as evangelicals compared to 25% in New Hampshire. So that meant that Trump could do poorly with conservatives and still win in New Hampshire because they are so outnumbered. And he did. He won despite winning only a third of the very conservative vote. I have been warning the Republican establishment since the first days of the Trump campaign that Trump's message was going to resonate precisely because the Republican Party ceased being an opposition party. And while they were all thinking that nobody would accept this, that they would abandon Trump because he's too uncouth, he's too unpredictable, he's too brash, braggadocious. I kept trying to warn them every day, starting last June. You people do not get it. You don't get the connection he's got with people who support him. You don't understand at all because you live in your cocoon inside the Beltway, in the established wherever, New York, Washington, and you really don't get. Now, everywhere you go, everybody's happy. Everywhere you go, everybody's doing well. There's no unemployment. People making a lot of money. You get up, you got a job to go to every day. They go to a nice dinner every night. Everything's cool. Everybody's house is nice. You go to parties a lot. Everything's cool. But that's not what's happening in the rest of the country. But they were sitting there thinking that all of these characteristic traits would eventually cause Trump to dwindle. And my point was, you people in the Republican side had better understand something. He's putting together a coalition that you claim to want. I mean, your stated reason for not opposing Obama is you need Hispanic votes. This is why they tell us they have to not push back on amnesty and illegal immigration and comprehensive immigration reform. No, we can't. We're the Hispanic vote. We keep hearing Lindsey Graham staying every night of the week up in New Hampshire. And how are they going to do it? What's the Republican Party plan for going out and reaching this new constituency? Not criticizing Obama. Not criticizing Obama and claiming to be for or supportive of the same things Obama is. And that somehow was magically going to cause voters that support Obama to abandon him and the Democrats and migrate to the Republican Party. Meanwhile, here's Trump running against everything going on in Washington and declaring that what's going on in Washington is incompetent and being performed by a bunch of hacks that are only in it for themselves. And he's put together a coalition that covers every group, demographic and otherwise, that you can think of. And among the smallest in his group is conservatives. That's why he can win big in New Hampshire with taking a not very big percentage of the conservative vote, because his coalition is so big and made up of so many other different groups of people. He won only a third of the very conservative vote. And among evangelical voters, Trump and Cruz were basically tied. Who in the world would predict that? After Cruz comes and dominates Iowa and does so on the basis of evangelical voters, and Trump, 2 Corinthians walk into a bar, Donald Trump, 2 Corinthians this and the Bible kills it, except my book. And yet, evangelicals support for Trump tied with Ted Cruz in New Hampshire. This was the scale of Trump's win. Trump won. The exit polls were right. Trump won men. He won women. He won every age group. He won every ideology. Liberal, conservative, moderate, libertarian, every group Trump won a majority of voters. He won among people who had gone to college and people who hadn't. He won among people who only had a high school education. He won among people who did not have a high school education. He won every single age bracket. He won those groups by huge margins. He won men 3-1 over second-place finisher. Women, he won 2-1. Voters under 30, he won 2-1. Nearly 40% of those who had not attended college voted Trump. A third of those who had attended college voted Trump. This is what the Republican Party has been telling us. They need to win. I've had them come to my office, I've told you. I've had Rand Paul here, Mitt Romney's here. One thing they've all said in common is the Republican Party can't win with Republican votes alone anymore. We have to branch out. We have to reach out. This is what they were telling me to prepare me for some of the campaign tactics that I was going to see, that they're going to have to reach out. And immigration was one of the ways reaching out, supporting amnesty. Well, all along, Trump has built that coalition the Republican Party claims to want. They're out there badgering it and bashing it. It's exactly what they claim to want. They could have had it. The Republican Party could have had the Trump coalition. They could have had it at health care. A majority of Americans opposed Obamacare from the get-go. The Republican Party could have seriously attempted to form an alliance with the Tea Party and the anti-Obamacare people and been a dominant majority party on that issue alone. And then on subsequent issues to come down the pike, the Republican Party could have formed an alliance with majorities in other areas of opposition, and they didn't. The Trump coalition could have been the Republican parties. They couldn't do it because they thought it was all conservative. They couldn't do it because they thought the Tea Party was a bunch of hayseed hicks who believe in pro-life politics, and they couldn't do it. They just couldn't build the bridge. Whatever it is, fear of social issues, dislike of conservatism, not wanting to get in bed with people who want the government to be smaller and less intrusive in people's, whatever it was, they couldn't do it. And now, because they didn't do it, there's Donald Trump. Donald Trump has the exact coalition the Republican Party, to a man, has told me they need to win, that they need to thrive. And now they're reduced to bashing it by virtue of bashing Trump. And now they're reduced to bashing it by virtue of bashing Cruz. The two people who are showing the Republican Party all they had to do all these past 7 years. But they didn't. They purposely, strategically, tactically refused to push back, refused to make a spectacle of stopping Obama, and they have themselves to blame for this predicament. People are not going to donate and vote and hear the right things during campaigns. The promises to stop Obama, to oppose Obamacare, to seriously make an effort to repeal it, even if they don't have the votes to override a veto. The effort, all it would have taken was the effort. All it would have taken was put the onus on Obama, make Obama illustrate that all this is his fingerprints. No such strategy was ever seen. So is it a revolution? Well, yeah. I mean, it's a revolution against the Republican establishment. No question. And on the Democrat side, you can say the same thing with Bernie Sanders. But the way that the pro-revolution groups that are out touting that have to combine Bernie Sanders and Trump's voters to make their point that there's a revolution here. Be wary of that, folks. What good does that do us? If you want to say, yeah, man, look at the electors, have people fed up with America. Look, if you combine the Bernie supporters and the Trump supporters, you've got an anti-Washington revolution. What good do Bernie's voters do us? Who the hell wants to align with them? What's the point of bringing them into that? I think it kind of misses the point to go there, to have to make your point of revolution. You don't have to do that. It's not complicated here. I know. I'm long. I've taken a break. Just hang in there, folks. Be back in a minute. Grab a quick phone call here in the first hour. We'll go to Greg in the Steel City. Greg in Pittsburgh. It's great to have you, sir. Hi.
Hey, Russ. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you.
Hey, with Mr. Trump's latest victory last night, I think the Republican voters have to start getting in the mindset of not so much as, Trump is, you like what he says, he's at times entertaining and spontaneous, however crudely, during his rallies. I think we have to start looking at him, in the Oval Office as president. It's all good and well to reject the Republican establishment. I think many, many people understand that. But can you picture a President Trump, representing the country, like at a state funeral?
Well, now it's
Greg, representing, in high.
Greg, it's interesting that you because Trump himself addressed this on the NBC Nightly News. I'm looking at the clock. We can squeeze these in, but I'm going to have to play them again to analyze them. Trump was asked by Lester Holt last night how different a Trump presidency would be from a Trump campaign. That's essentially what the question was. Number 11 here, I'm sorry.
Last night, you used a pretty vulgar term, repeating something someone in the crowd had said. And I'm wondering to myself, would you say that as President of the United States?
No,
with that seal on the podium?
Much different.
So are you going to be a different guy as president than the one we see out
here? Just so I went to the best school. I was a good student. I have an uncle who was, one of the top professors at MIT. I mean, there's a good gene pool right there. I have to do what I have to do, right?
So, Donald, you're saying this is an act?
Well, no, it's not an act. Last night I had thousands of people. We had a great time. And it wasn't my word. It was a word that a woman kept shouting. And I only repeated the word, and the place was wild. Standing ovation, everybody loved it.
But that doesn't mean it was a good taste.
No, but I'll tell you what, when you're president or if you're about to be president, you would act differently. It's not a question of acting. I want to be different. You're being hit from 15 different sides. I want to be different. When you're president, you act in a different way. There's no question about that, and I would do that.
Okay, I don't have time to get into it now, but he's going to be different. You have to be. You have to be different when you're president. Donald Trump, back after this. Bernie Sanders said he didn't have time for a full breakfast with Al Sharpton at Sylvia's, which is wise. You don't want to be seen eating. Politicians eating. Remember what happened to Caroline Kennedy when she went there? She was eating. It looked bad. Dribbling down the chin and so forth, and Al didn't eat. He knew. Bernie said he just had time for half a cup of coffee because they had to talk too much about rebuilding the African-American community. It's just stunning here. Yeah, there they are. There's a picture of it right now. If this doesn't say it all, Bernie Sanders sitting here at Sylvia's in Harlem with the Reverend Sharpton. 7 years into the first administration of the first African-American president. Bernie Sanders is sitting with Al Sharpton, and they are whining and moaning about how it's all gone wrong for the black community in America. And it has. It has gotten worse under Obama. I don't care where you go to look. Where you go to unemployment, employment, teen unemployment, per capita income, whatever category you want to use, life in America has gotten demonstrably worse for practically everybody, and especially for African Americans. And so here's Bernie Sanders, while we have the first African American president ever who was elected to reverse this. He was elected to finally, after all these years in slavery, the United States of America and its government was going to focus on the victims of this country. It was going to focus on the victims and the people who've been made to pay and build and do all this and have been ripped off and taken advantage of. The Obama administration was finally going to get even with all those people who had mistreated minority groups left and right. And every one of those minority groups, even if you want to include women in there because the feminazis love to portray themselves as victims, they're all complaining. It's all worse. This is the Limbaugh theorem on display, bigger than it's ever been. These guys are complaining about the status quo that they built. They are complaining about the problems that they are the architects of. It is mind-boggling to me how they get away with this. On the one hand, we're told that Obama has been a brilliant president. He has been great. He has been historic. Obama's the first president with national health care, the first president to do this, the first president he's the smartest president. We have all of these things, and yet over here, the Democrat campaign, this country's in worse shape than it's ever been in. And somehow, it's the fall of Wall Street. Somehow, Obama failed to tame them. He got even with everybody else, but somehow, he has failed to get even with Wall Street. Dirty little secret, Wall Street buys, funds, props up the Democrat Party. So here's Bernie sitting around having coffee with Al Sharpton talking about what needs to be done for the African-American community. 7 years of everything they believe in having been implemented with no opposition. Well, no, I don't expect them to sit there and admit that they're the problem. No, I don't expect that. But I am hopeful that the American people, that this is going to be tough. I mean, you've got college graduates now coming out of school having apparently bought totally into socialism. They think it's cool. They think it's fair. They think it's equality. And in a way, look at it from their standpoint, where they go to school, college campuses. For the most part, they're pretty nice places, other than the rape that they say happens there. But you can avoid that. The campuses are nice. They're idyllic. Classrooms are nice. The professors, look at the professors. The socialists teaching this stuff, they look like they got pretty comfortable lives. I mean, they've got jackets with little patches on the elbows, and some of them smoke pipes, but they've got nice offices, and they've got nice homes, quarters, whatever you want to call them, on the campus. It looks really, really clubby and affluent. I mean, what's not to like? And then these graduates still run around. They look at Hillary Clinton, and here she is making $115 million over the years doing speeches, and she's an avowed socialist. Well, she doesn't admit it, but she is. What's not to like? I mean, if you look at it from their point of view, it's not hard to see how socialism has been sold, including as having an economic advantage and having an economic superiority. They're not taught, obviously, about the failures of socialism. The failures of this country and the problem areas are all blamed on big corporations, the usual Democrat Party enemies list, and Republicans and George Bush and the Iraq War and what have you. So I know it's a long shot, but I'm going to keep harping on it. It's just amazing to listen to Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, Bernie Sanders run around, whine, moan, complain about this country and what's going wrong these past 7 years when they have got everything they want, to one degree or another. Here's Bernie, little soundbite, outside, actually he had left, I guess he was on The View, talking about his meeting with Al Sharpton, the National Action Network. And the co-host, Sonny Hostin, says, "We've heard that you met with Al Sharpton this morning for breakfast at Sylvia's restaurant in Harlem."
It wasn't much of a breakfast. I only had half a cup of coffee. We have a lot of support within the African-American community. I think the reason we'll do well is our views on criminal justice in this country. Most Americans, black, white, Latino, whoever, understand that it is not acceptable to see unarmed people being shot by police officers. And let me just say this. When youth unemployment in the African-American community, kids who are unemployed or underemployed for high school graduates, is 51%. Don't tell me we do not need to invest heavily in the African-American community and create decent paying jobs.
There it is. Right there in it. 51% in the African-American community. It wasn't that when Obama took office. 51%. And we have to do what? We have to invest heavily in the African-American community and create decent paying jobs. What have you been doing the past 7 years? Why has Obama allowed things to get so bad in the African-American community? With Barack Obama in the White House, and they run around talking about all of these innocent, unarmed African-Americans being shot by the cops like it happens every day. Why? How? What's going to be any different with you in there, Bernie? We've just had Obama, who's every bit the socialist you are, and he's a little smarter about it than you are. every bit the committed leftist, every bit the anti-police department president that you would be. Why is all this happening? Even after Obama's DOJ takes over local police departments, why is it they continue to behave in manners you disapprove of? And I thought, Obama, how many job summits have we had here with people like Thomas Loopy Friedman and New York Times participating in the first 2-3 years of the White House? There were job seminars seemingly every month. There's nothing the government can do to create jobs. The government is destroying jobs. The government is destroying the 40-hour work week. The government is destroying every element of every institution that has defined this country's greatness. And we're living amongst that destruction. And Hillary and Bernie are running for office as though all this that has happened either hasn't happened or it's somebody else's fault. Look, if 7 years, going on 8 now, of unopposed, unstoppable socialism, transformation, whatever you want to call it, if that doesn't even begin to show progress, then what is it that says we need 7 more years of it? These are the people who have made the problems. These are the people, the architects. They have created the problems. It is socialism. It is a gigantic and growing government comprised of all of its inefficiencies and lack of compassion, bloated bureaucracies that has led to all of this. Anyway, one of Bernie Sanders' big complaints is all the money in politics. We got to get rid of Citizens United. We got to get rid of all the money. You know, if you look at the people that won in New Hampshire, they probably are people who had the least money. New Hampshire combined campaign and super PAC spending. New Hampshire. Jeb Bush, $36 million. Percentage of the vote, 11.1%. Chris Christie, $18.5 million. Percentage of the vote, 7.5%. Marco Rubio, $15.2 million. 10.5% of the vote. John Kasich, $12.1 million. 16% of the vote. Donald Trump, $3.7 million. 35% of the vote. Ted Cruz, $580,000. Barely over 1/2 of 1 million. Cruz got 11.5%, 11.6%. If big money were buying elections, then Jeb and Hillary would have won big last night, and it wouldn't have even been close. And Bernie Sanders would not have even been an asterisk if big money was what really wins elections. John Kasich spent $12 million to come in second. Trump spends $8 million less and comes in first and more than doubles Kasich's support. You want to talk about a waste of time and a waste of money? And when you run these numbers and you boil it down to how much was spent per vote, it becomes even more illustrative of the absolute waste. But where did the money go? Where does this money really, really go? The lion's share of all of this money goes to the drive-by media, because the lion's share of this money is spent to buy advertising, television advertising, radio advertising, print advertising, and none of the pamphlets, and you have to spend some money to hire people to run out there and knock on doors and make phone calls and so forth. But it's in the drive-by media's interest that all of this money be spent, and it's the drive-by media that keeps celebrating all the monies. It's the drive-by media that keeps promoting the value of all the money in politics. Yes, because they're the primary beneficiaries of all the money. Above and beyond, maybe in some cases, even the candidates. I'd say that the drive-by media has benefited much more from Jeb's money than Jeb did. They love all these candidates still being in. They love all this continue to go on. They love this big money, and they sit there. The F. Chuck Todds and the rest of these drive-bys, they love to tell you how they think it's so pathetic, it's so impure, all this money in politics, and yet it's what's paying them all. Ted Cruz spent the least amount per vote than all candidates in New Hampshire, took third place. Jeb Bush spent more than 30 times the amount of money in New Hampshire than Donald Trump did. When you break it down, Jeb Bush spent $1,200 per vote in New Hampshire. $1,200, and still was unable to finish in the top three. Back after this. It's Rush Limbaugh, the EIB Network. Great to have you here. 800-282-2882 if you want to be on the program. Already Wednesday, the fastest week in media this is, and we're going to go to Ron in Houston. You're next, sir, and I'm really glad that you waited. Hello.
Hey, Rush, mega dittos from the big oil capital of the world. Quick question. I really need your insight and your wisdom on this. I'm a Trump supporter. I've donated several times to his campaign. I'm really excited about what he's done. But as I meet with friends and the more and more we discuss the mess that Washington's in, the political incorrectness, everything that's going wrong, not only in this country but in the world, I continue to wonder if maybe he's too nice to get done what needs to be done in Washington. And what we're looking at in the global stage, I wonder if maybe, as radical as it sounds, Trump might be the best alternative. And the reason I say that, Rush, is because honestly...
Wait just a second. I didn't hear... Who did you say is too nice?
I think that Ted Cruz is too nice.
Ted Cruz is too nice, okay.
Even though he talks tough, and we know that he's got the political will, he's got the conservative background, he's a great debater, I just don't think he's going to be able to do what needs to be done in Washington fast enough. And the reason I say that is the world is so radically different today. I wonder if even Ronald Reagan, with the same political expertise that he had, if he could make the radical changes after 7 years of what Obama does to set our country and possibly the world back decades in time.
Okay, so I need to ask you a question. Since you're eventually getting to where you're going to ask for my advice on this or whatever, I need to ask you a question first.
Sure.
If Cruz is too nice to deal with the powerful forces that are currently shaping the world, and if Reagan might not even be able, what is Trump going to do? What are you convinced Trump is going to do to beat back these powerful forces?
Well, I think what Trump does is you've said it yourself, Rush, ever since he got into the campaign. He doesn't need the media. He doesn't need the establishment. I mean, business in the world today and business in New York City is probably as tough an environment that you need to exist in. And he has constantly succeeded. Sure, he's used the rules in his favor, but he's not easily intimidated. He's got the character. He's got the political will. He's got the.
Okay, look, hold it. I don't. That's fine. But let me ask it again. But telling you one thing first, you don't think Ted Cruz is tough enough. You will not find another senator in your memory who's ever gone to the floor of the Senate and accused his majority leader of being a liar to his face. On national TV, Senate being covered by C-SPAN 2, Ted Cruz has taken on personally, face-to-face, the people in the Senate where he is that he believes are not doing enough to stop Obama and are lying to him about the issues that they are asking him to support. I don't know how you define guts or courage, but...
Actually, Rush, I understand your point, and maybe I misspoke. It's not that he's not tough enough. I just believe that under the normal process that a standard traditional politician would work and would try to get things done in Washington is not what we need. I think the level that this country has depressed to after 7 years of Obama,
okay,
I don't believe that there is just a traditional political exit from where we are.
So how does that manifest? If the traditional way that politics has happened in this country is not going to work anymore, what does that mean? That Trump's going to go in there and do what he wants regardless what the House and Senate say about it? And he's just going to use the power of his personality to get it done? And if they disagree with him, he's going to tell them to pound sand and do it anyway? Because that's what we need right now. I mean, what does all this mean to you as it manifests itself in real life? That's what you're asking me to consider. So I'm asking, how's he going to do all this?
Okay, well, exactly. The very thing that so many people have criticized him for is that he said he's going to make deals. He does make deals. The Democrats, under the last 7 years, they've gotten absolutely everything they want with no pushback from the Republicans. I believe that he would be able to negotiate, giving the Democrats the same way that all great negotiations in the world take place, so that both parties walk away from the table saving face, so they can go back to their supporters and say that they won. So I think that he could give the Democrats, give the liberals substantial action. He could give them gains in the game, but he would get what we need. Close the border, stop illegal immigration, start creating jobs, start working towards making the U.S. great in the world in terms of having people respect us instead of treat us as if we're just another person sitting around the table at NATO.
I hear Trump say all that, and I see people cheering it, and it sounds great. I just want to find out from you and others who support Trump on a day-to-day, but what do you see happening? Do you see him building the wall? Will the wall be built, do you believe?
Without a doubt, the wall will be built.
Will Mexico pay for the wall?
I believe what the average person probably understands is that Mexico will pay for it. The question is, are we going to send them an invoice and they're going to reimburse us? No. But he will get it back in trade. I believe that at the end of the day, just as he would on any of his business deals, he would be able to show you on the balance sheet that we have not paid for it, that someone else has.
Okay. No, that's fine. I don't want you to misunderstand the tone here. All of this is me learning. You're an avowed Trump supporter. You're convinced that he's the only guy. I'm just curious what you see day to day happening. Thanks. Right on. We're back. Back we are. El Rushbo. Meeting and surpassing all audience expectations every day. Folks, I want to remind you, we're now at the beginning of the cycle again. Before the Hawkeye, everything was theoretical. All we had to go on was polling data. And it led to all kinds of agendas and scenarios. And the media has to report something. The 24/7 news cycles, they've got to report something. So they're naturally going to conflate polling data with reality, and the two are going to end up being confused. Then by the time you throw everybody's agenda from guest to guest to guest to analyst to analyst to analyst, before anything has ever happened, you have a number of people already thinking they know what the outcome is. But then we actually have the vote, and everything that happened and was said prior to it is pretty much forgotten because an injection of hard, cold reality has taken place. It happened after Iowa. And you remember what happened after Iowa. After Iowa, oh, my God, Ted Cruz, Ted Cruz, geez, Ted Cruz. Establishment went nuts, but then they were happy because Trump didn't win. Oh, my God, it may be true. It may be true. Maybe Trump is a myth. Maybe Trump isn't real. Oh, we're still alive. We're still thinking, God, we've got a chance. Reality changed everything. Then the cycle started repeating because upcoming was New Hampshire. So Iowa was forgotten. What do the polls in New Hampshire say? And another 6-7 days of theoretical analysis coupled with agendas from analysts and guests and hosts and so forth started dominating a news cycle. Once again, we had the conflating of the combination of reality and theory to the point that people were prepared for what they thought they already knew was going to happen because of all the pre-New Hampshire primary coverage. Then the New Hampshire primary comes, and then another hard, cold injection of reality. We have the results. And the establishment was so happy after Iowa, their boy just bottomed out. Marco Rubio bottomed out in New Hampshire. Trump outperforms the polling. Oh, no. For the first time in the entire process, they said Trump's real. Do not doubt me. Even after Iowa, they were really hoping that this whole Trump thing was a myth. See, what they were telling themselves was, if there's a real anti-establishment revolution going out there, if there's real populism and real nationalism going on out there, then Trump would have won 50% of the vote in Iowa. But he didn't win. He came in second place. He was not happy. He was not, everybody was upset. Ted Cruz won the thing. People started telling us, well, yeah, we knew that was likely going to happen because of the evangelical vote. They get all geared up. They get all excited for the possibility that Trump is really not real. It's just a myth. Then New Hampshire happens, and oh no. Now a dose of reality sets in, and every myth that they had created for themselves the last 5 or 6 days blown to smithereens. And now we're starting it all over again, this time with New Hampshire. And what are we hearing about New Hampshire? Well, in New Hampshire, it's all whole, for both sides, by the way. Bernie's toast. One off New Hampshire, it's a toast. He's toast because there aren't any African Americans in New Hampshire. It's lily white in New Hampshire. It's lily white in Iowa. You go to New Hampshire, it's a much different. That's where Hillary's going to get back in it and close Bernie out, and it's South Carolina, and it's over. That's right, South Carolina. And on the Republican side, South Carolina. Now, that's the case. It comes in second. That was, of course, the second-place finisher. New Hampshire is often proclaimed the winner. Establishment chosen guy Rubio didn't perform like they hoped, so now they're lost. Jeb didn't perform. They wouldn't know where to go. Trump wins big. Oh, no, Trump's real. Now we have 5 or 6 more days of theorizing as they try to tell themselves they still have a chance. They try to tell themselves it's still not over. They try to tell themselves that whatever they want to believe is true. And on February 20th, we're going to have another hard dose of reality. We're going to have another debate this Saturday on February 20th, South Carolina primary. Hard dose of reality is going to settle in. And this cycle, it's important not to get caught up in it. What's really happened so far, and I got to be very careful here. I don't want to offend anybody. But all that's happened here is 2 small states have voted. 2 small states. We're not even to 1% of the delegates yet. And people are acting like it's over here, it's over there. For some candidates, it obviously is, but they're not dropping out. They're not dropping out. That's only going to help Trump, by the way, at least as far as South Carolina goes. But it is this endless cycle here of theorizing and pretend and fantasy land with an occasional hard, cold shower of reality that brings everybody back for a while. But then the whole process starts repeating, where everybody tells you what they know is going to happen in South Carolina and why it's going to happen in South Carolina. And yet, in the 2 states so far, there have been shocks, despite what everybody thought they knew. Bernie winning as big as he did was a shock. And as far as the establishment's concerned, after Iowa, they really thought maybe it's all overstated for Trump. Maybe Trump's polling is nowhere near what his turnout's going to be. Not the case. Worse than they thought. We here just sit back and watch this stuff and comment as it goes. Let's go to the audio sound bites and let's look at listen to some of the reaction last night from varied interests. We'll start with Britt Hume, Fox News, special coverage, New Hampshire primary. Brett Baer, speaking with the senior political analyst emeritus, Britt Hume, about Trump's primary victory. Brett Baer says, Britt, what are your thoughts here, buddy?
The Federation of the Fed Up, it appears, has carried the day in the Republican Party. The voters that were for Trump are people who consistently we've seen in polling, in this exit polling tonight, are people who have had it with the standard politicians. Now, whether this will carry, how far this will carry forward into the upcoming states is anybody's guess. But that's where we are, and this establishes it as well as anything we've seen.
The Federation of the Fed Up. That's you. the Federation of the Fed Up appears has carried the day in the Republican Party. The Federation of the Fed Up has just flipped the bird to the establishment. They're not happy about it. The voters that were for Trump are people consistently we've seen in polling are people who've had it with standard politicians. Whether this will carry on, how far this will go on, anybody's guess. Britt, it's going to keep going on. It's going to keep going on because the Republican Party, people have lost faith in it. They've lost faith in its purpose. Its purpose, when in the minority, is to stop the Democrats. Pure and simple. And there hasn't been any of that in 7 years. This is hard for people in Washington to figure out is quite telling to me. Because it's right. I mean, it's so obvious you can't miss this. The motivation for supporting Trump, the motivation for supporting outsiders, the energy that comes with it. How can you miss what this is about? Maybe you don't miss it. Maybe you just deny it and think that in time the Federation of the Fed Up will come to its senses. Whereas the Federation of the Fed Up will tell you that after 7 years they have come to their senses and they have realized what's up with what. And that's why they're doing what they're doing. A couple of days ago, David Brooks. You remember David Brooks is a conservative columnist in the New York Times. His most recent column, he wrote of what great people Barack and Michelle Obama are. The civility, the sophistication, the erudite nature of their character and personality. And he demonstrated it this way. He said, wouldn't you much rather have people like Barack and Michelle Obama go on the board of a charity in your community or your town than Ted Cruz? Wouldn't it make you feel better about your town and your community if the charity apparatus in your town was chaired by Barack and Michelle Obama and their civility and sophistication, as opposed to Ted Cruz, which is how he chose to demonstrate that he thinks Cruz is a neophyte, anti-intellectual barbarian, and the Obamas are the epitome of sophistication and culture and civility. And what a damn shame so many people don't see it that way. Well, David Brooks was on PBS. Special coverage of the New Hampshire primaries. Judy Woodruff said, we heard Donald Trump say that he was going to be the greatest president that God has ever created. David, there's no shortage of self-regard for Mr. Trump, is there?
He just has become a force of nature. And the question for Donald Trump is, where's the ceiling? A, can he make himself broadly acceptable to all parts of the party? And B, is there an alternative? Is anybody going to rise up and become the rival? Will it ever be a one-on-one race, Trump versus someone else? Right now, it looks like Cruz is the most likely of those possible alternatives. Among the mainstream conservatives, maybe there is no viable unifying force.
He's dejected, folks. This is not making Mr. Brooks happy. That there's no alternative to Trump and Cruz. Why even be a conservative then? Why even be a Republican? If that's our alternative, oh my God, does that not signal the end of civilization as we know it? And this muddled outcome, the fact that the field was not winnowed and parried down, has caused the worst possible outcome for these people, because they want somebody they can support to rise up and take on Trump. That's what they're hoping and praying for. Oh, it was going to be Jeb, and then it was going to be Rubio, and maybe it was going to be Christie. And now, Kasich? Really? Hey, try this. This is the Politico, just fresh off the The Wire Dispatch headline, Jeb plans scorched earth attack on Kasich and Rubio. Jeb Bush already laying the groundwork for a brutal South Carolina campaign against establishment rivals John Kasich and Marco Rubio. In an internal memo circulated late Tuesday. By the way, remember, the Politico is where establishment Republicans go to leak news to the drive-bys. The Politico, that's where the establishment Republicans go to leak stuff. So that's why this is probably true. In an internal memo circulated late Tuesday, the Jeb campaign distributed talking points to top campaign aides and surrogates, highlighting lines of attack they plan to take against both candidates. The memo suggests that Kasich does not have a realistic path to winning, and that's why the attack is going to take place. You can tell people, don't waste your vote on Kasich. He's hopeless. You'll have a chance of winning. Don't waste your time. The real question is, then why are you wasting your money on him? But that's just me. The attack on Rubio. Senator Rubio has lost momentum, has been exposed as completely unprepared to be president, it says. And then it adds that Rubio has demonstrated no respect for the nomination process and expects this to be a coronation. That's what Jeb is going to say in the scorched earth campaign against Rubio. Then the memo says Jeb also did well because he remains the only Republican candidate willing to take on Donald Trump and willing to stand up for conservative values. Oh, they make this so hard some days. Internal memo claiming that Jeb's the only guy, remaining the only guy willing to take on Trump, and yet the memo's how it's scorched earth against Kasich and Rubio. No, I understand the strategery. The strategery is forget Trump. You got to get some people out of the way first. You got to get rid of Kasich, came in second New Hampshire. Got to get rid of Rubio. He finished ahead of Jeb. You got to get rid of those two first. Understand that. It's like in baseball. If you're in fourth place, you have to beat the teams ahead of you. But it doesn't mean when you play the first place team, you don't try to beat them. So there's it's an attempt here to win on the field. What Jeb is going to try to do is use South Carolina to emerge as the one remaining establishment candidate that the establishment can coalesce behind, as the original dream was way back in the early days of this, and take on Trump. Here's Sarah in Darnestown, Maryland. Great to have you. Appreciate your patience, and hello.
Hey, Rush. Great to talk to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I agree with your point earlier that the Republicans have missed a huge opportunity, but I just think Trump is not the answer, really for two main reasons. One, he's not a conservative. And I think after Mitt lost, we all spent so much time reflecting and saying, well, that's what we got for not electing a conservative. And I think the other main problem is his demeanor is just not presidential. I mean, we've spent years still revisiting Clinton and what a disaster that was. And I just think it would be such a mistake for the Republicans to elect someone or nominate someone who's so boorish and classless and have him associated with the Republican Party.
And I want you to keep listening, because in the next hour, we're going to get back to these two Trump soundbites where he's asked about this, and he admits that it's all going to change when he becomes president, that there's a different set of requirements when you're running and you're campaigning and your primaries. But when you actually win the whole thing and become president, you got to change. And he assures people he's going to change. It was a question specifically related to the kitty cat name that his female audience member called Cruz. But yeah, well, you know, this conservative angle. Your question about Romney is good, but here's the difference. I know that it's true. We had a bunch of Republicans sit home in 2012 because Romney wasn't conservative enough. And you're asking, what about Trump? I think a lot of conservative, and don't forget. Look, this is going to irritate a lot of people, but you look at the exit polling and how it's backed up by the actual returns in New Hampshire. Conservatives are not the majority of Trump's coalition. They are not. He's got a coalition made up of virtually every group of people in every demographic and every nationality, every ethnicity. And the conservatives that are in his, I think it's not about the conservatism anymore to them. They're saying, what good has all this conservatism done us anyway? Now, Sarah, if you have further questions, hang on. I'll be glad to answer them. I just am out of time right now. We've got to go. Reince Priebus has weighed in on what happened in New Hampshire. And it was on Wolf Blitzer on CNN. And the audio soundbite coming up. You can be the judge. Whether or not the RNC establishment even now understands what happened to them. And what is happening. That and more coming up. So I've checked the email during the course of the program today, and there's been a lot of people, Rush, what do you mean the establishment is still thinking that Trump's not real? Well, let me give you a headline here. Reuters. Trump shows his presidential bid is no mere publicity stunt. How do you write a headline like that? You can only write that headline if you think that all of this has been a joke up till now. If you think Trump hasn't been serious about it. If you've been hoping, praying, thinking, whatever, that this is just a bad dream and that Trump's got some other purpose here and at some point he's going to drop out, that all of this is just something you can't figure out. But at the end of the day, it's going to be Jeb or some traditional Republican in there. That's how you write that headline. I'm here to tell you that even going into New Hampshire, folks, I said yesterday, it's just a bit of an exaggeration. Some of the people in the Republican establishment are still in July and August, September. If Trump gets the nomination, in September, they're going to be hoping and thinking he drops out. Some of them are so convinced that there's some unseen secret purpose that Trump has here. And at some point, he's going to drop out, having accomplished whatever mission that he is on. I don't know how widespread it is, but that degree of denial still rampant in many sectors of the administration, or the establishment, rather. Great to have you back with us. Fastest 3 hours in media already here into hour 3. The telephone number is 800-282-2882. If you want to be on the program, and the email address is lrushbo@eibnet.com. This afternoon on Wolf Blitzer, Wolf interviewed the Republican National Committee Chairman, Reince Priebus. And Wolf said, I'm sure you took a close look at the Republican primary exit polls from New Hampshire last night, Mr. Priebus. Here are a few numbers that may be of concern to you. 47% of the Republican voters said they felt betrayed by Republican politicians. 50% said the next president should be from outside the so-called establishment. Are you worried, Mr. Priebus, about those kinds of numbers? These are Republican primary voters, after all, answering this way.
No, not really, because I think there's a lot of people in both parties that are mad at the parties, mad at the system, mad at Washington, that, it's a factional type government. I mean, it's sort of very difficult, obviously, when you have a split government to get things done, and people don't have time for things not getting done. And so I think it's pretty normal, and I think it's pretty common, and I expect that sort of vein is going to play itself out through the next few months, and we'll have a unified party when it's done, and those folks are, as long as they're staying involved, which I think is important for us to keep those folks involved in the party, that they will participate come November of 2016.
Maybe I am missing something here, but didn't he just say, in answer to Wolf Blitzer, explaining all these Republican primary voters, saying that the next president should come outside the establishment, 47% feel betrayed by Republican politicians. Did he just say that he understands it because Republican voters are upset that things aren't getting done in Washington? I heard that right. Let me consult that transcript here. I just want to be certain that I'm not accused of misrepresenting or misinterpreting this. So I have the transcript here. Well, I think there's a lot of people in both parties mad at the parties, mad at the system, mad at Washington, that it's a factional type government. I mean, it's sort of very difficult, obviously, when you have a split government to get things done, and people don't have time for things not getting done. And so I think it's pretty normal. I think it's pretty common. So, I mean, with all due respect, it appears that the chairman of the Republican National Committee does not know, or if he does know, does not want to explain in truth why he knows what he knows. But on the surface here, it appears he doesn't know that most Republican voters are sick and tired of what has gone on in Washington. Everybody harps on the fact that there's gridlock and nothing's getting done. That couldn't be further from the truth. Too much is getting done. Witness the most recent budget deal. The Republicans clearly have a desire to work with Obama. They clearly have a desire to work with the Democrats. Mitch McConnell has made it abundantly clear that's what their intentions and hopes are. In most people's opinion, there has been too little gridlock. There hasn't been enough disagreement. There hasn't been enough stopping the Democrats from advancing their agenda. But apparently, it's one of two things. Either Mr. Priebus actually believes this, that you are ticked off at all of the disagreements in Washington preventing things from getting done, meaning you like government. You want more of it. You want government working, and you want a Republican Party that makes the government work, and you want a Republican Party that can work with the Democrats to get things done, because only government can get things done. And I'm here to tell you, if he really believes that, that's a shocker. It may be something he has to say for donor purposes or what have you. Mr. Priebus, Republican voters are mad at what has gotten done. Republican voters are frustrated beyond their ability to express it and display it to you. They are fed up at the fundamental transformation of America that is unstopped, to which there is no opposition expressed. But you know, these establishment types, they keep running around. I mean, if you leave Chris Christie to his own devices, he will campaign, because he did, on the basis that he can work with the Democrats. I saw him say it just a couple months ago. I'm the guy. I'm your guy. You want Washington to work? I'm your guy. I'm the guy that can cooperate with the Democrats. I'm the guy that can tell the Democrats, hey, if you got ideas I like, I want your ideas. We can work together. I'm the guy. We can cross aisles. And that's you start saying that, and the Republican primary voter is going to cancel you out. You are not going to get anywhere. So Jeb Bush up in New Hampshire yesterday, you know, he really wants to project and predict what's going to happen. Then when it does or doesn't happen, they start telling you why it did or didn't happen. Like, people are trying to explain what went wrong with Rubio. And everybody harps on his debate performance. But there might be other factors that you don't know. In terms of Jeb Bush, why didn't he do better with all of this money? Look, I think when you're up in New Hampshire and you've got a decided libertarian and independent moderate electorate, Jeb's actually up there running against Citizens United. You've got John Kasich saying he may be more to the left of Hillary Clinton, but Kasich's message is almost expressed with tears. We've got to work together. We got to love people. We got to show people that we love them, and we got to let them love us. We got to show that love is the answer. We do. We do. We have to stop this bickering. We have to work together. Apparently, that's what the Republican message is, and that there hasn't been enough of that. There are other things happening, of course, outside the realm of presidential politics. Something pretty big happened yesterday. And I was reading my little tech blog, Geeks, last night, and they're fit to be tied. They're depressed. They're angry. They're just beside themselves over the Supreme Court putting a stop to Obama's plan to dramatically reduce carbon emissions as it's reported. That's not what Obama's plan was. Obama's plan was a massive, massive tax increase. Here's what happened. The Supreme Court placed a temporary stay or a halt on a wide-reaching plan to curb carbon emissions from power plants in what's described as a major setback to the regime's plan to shift the U.S. to clean energy. It was a 5-4 decision. Supreme Court granted a stay to opponents of the EPA's Clean Power Plan. Now get this. The Clean Power Plan aims to cut carbon pollution 32% below 2005 levels by 2030. That's not possible. Not without going back to the Stone Age. It literally is not possible. You couldn't do that without shutting down the engine of the United States and world economy. You could not do it. But that doesn't matter. You could try. You could start raising taxes. You could punish people for carbon usage. You could start getting into the act of trading carbon vouchers and permits, and you could create all kinds of new revenue streams and taxes in your objective to get to that. You could never do this. States would have to limit their use of coal-fired power plants to accomplish this, or else shift over to more efficient technologies at their coal plant. That couldn't be done. 30% below 2005? It's not possible. It simply isn't possible. For one thing, you'd have to stop human beings from exhaling. This is just, it's mind-boggling. And then there are a couple of other stories, buried though they may be, about how the solar industry is flopping. And it is flopping big time. It's flopping big in Boston. And the reason is it can't survive without subsidies. An Elon Musk solar energy company, $3.4 billion lost. You know, Elon Musk, everybody hails him as a great inventor and visionary, but he exists totally on government subsidies. And when the subsidies dry up, these solar companies cannot stay afloat. So it was a horrible day for the environmentalist wackos yesterday. And I want to read to you from one sample. One's the same as the other in terms of this. I want to read to you one of my little tech blogs here. The Supreme Court's decision to halt the EPA's rules is somewhat more than a temporary setback for us. It also signals that the court is likely leaning in the state's favor, with a majority of justices believing there's a good reason to grant the stay. It suggests that they believe these are onerous rules that may well present problems for the petitioners before being overturned. This is horrible news for Obama. It's bad news for the EPA, and bad news really for anyone hoping to see us combat climate change rather than be destroyed by increasingly powerful effects like rising sea levels and crop shortages. So these young people think that the Supreme Court has just doomed us to being destroyed by rising sea levels and crop shortages, all because we're not going to be punished. 30% below 2005. You want to have fun. You want to have fun. You got to be careful how you do this. You know anybody with an electric car? If you do, I don't care what kind, doesn't matter what kind it is. I don't mean a hybrid, an electric car. Tesla, what other electric cars are there? Tesla, Chevy, the Volt, and the Spark and all that. Walk up to them, and preferably with their car, and marvel to walk around the car like you really admire the thing. That's how you'll rope them in, you'll suck them in. Or you really admire that thing, looks so beautiful. How do you like a coal power plant fired car? What? What do you mean? Yeah, your car's powered by coal-powered power plants. You like that? What do you mean, coal? I'm a clean energy electric car. Where do you think you're getting electricity to charge this baby? Well, I plug it in the wall. It's clean energy. Where's the power company getting the power for you to charge your car? Well, it's coal, Bubby. You are driving a coal-powered car. How does it feel? I love doing it. You ought to see. The first time I tried that, you should have seen the alarm on their face. They really think they're doing good work. I mean, many of these people driving these things really think they are planet saviors. and they hate coal. They have been convinced that coal is the absolute worst substance on earth. And I'm sorry to tell you, coal is powering the electric car. There's no other way to explain it. It certainly isn't clean energy. There's so many myths. Here's Joe Klein. Joe Klein on PBS, Charlie Rose last night. Joe Klein, he's a Time Magazine columnist, well-known drive-by media specialist. And he threw a temper tantrum last night over the returns in New Hampshire. Charlie Rose said, Joe, you've seen a lot of politics out there. What did you see tonight?
2/3 of the Republicans in New Hampshire didn't vote for Donald Trump, and it's amazing that 1/3 did. This is a guy who doesn't know anything except to say evil things about other people. I think that we in our business have to be completely honest about this. If you vote for Trump, it means you're not paying attention. These are low-information voters. They are a real threat to this country.
Isn't this just delicious, isn't it? I don't care if he steals low information. I'm honored. But that's not the point. Isn't this delicious? The very party that thrives and survives on low information voters, the Democrat Party and the American left, it wouldn't be where it is were it not for low information. But they think they're so sophisticated, so worldly, so educated. And now they're describing Trump's voters as low information and people are not paying attention. And you are a real threat to this. No, not the college kids coming out educated in the wonders and beauties of socialism. No. These people voting for Trump. And he wasn't finished, but I have to take a time out here. We'll be back in a second. Jacksonville, Florida. Hello, Scott. Great to have you back on the EIB network. Hello.
Hey, Rush, how are you?
Good. Thank you.
You know, a couple hours ago you mentioned that Bernie Sanders and Reverend Al had coffee together. And I've got to wonder, did Bernie Sanders ask Reverend Al to pay up that $4.5 million in back taxes? Have you thought of that? The two questions I had for you. Number one, I was watching Hillary's acceptance speech last night, even though she lost, and she compared her own life of service to the service of police, teachers, firefighters, and nurses. I fell out of my chair.
It's part of the illusion. Mrs. Clinton has to obscure and distract people away from what is being reported about her vast speech income, much of it from banks, $115 million. So this is how she's going about trying to portray herself as a woman of the peoples.
And then the second question I want to ask you is, I've been with you since the first Gulf War. I love you. I buy 2F by T. The thing is that when you were mentioning the other day, and I'm paraphrasing, you know, this thing with Marco Rubio and repeating himself, maybe that was not such a big deal. Rush, I was on the couch watching it, and I support Trump. My wife supports Marco, and my wife just started looking at her feet like, oh, my gosh. I really think that performance really hurt him.
He has said so. The point that I was trying to make, I was not trying to salvage Rubio. I'm trying to salvage the notion that what he said was right. I admitted that it looked bad. I didn't make any excuses for that.
Right.
But I'm telling you, and in fact, this is starting to be made fun of now. I've seen, I can't remember who, a couple of columns. Oh, it's important what Rubio is saying, that Obama doesn't know what he's doing. What? Well, give us some news. Well, I'm sorry, it is news. It's because it isn't that Obama doesn't know what he's doing. He knows exactly what he's doing. It should have been one of the motivating and orienting factors of the entire Republican opposition. And the fact that there's some Republicans in the field who can't say it because they've gotten too close to Obama is important. You know me, I believe having people understand liberalism is crucial in defeating it. And understanding that Obama intends to do all this, and Bernie Sanders and Hillary going to add to it, I think it's important. Brian in Oceanside, California. Hi, great to have you here.
Hi, Rush. How you doing?
Pretty good. Thank you.
Rush, I guess I kind of have to change my question or my statement because since I've listened to you today, I think I'm understanding what you're trying to do. I'm a little disturbed. It seems like Cruz won. and, Iowa, and it just seems like nobody made a big deal out of that, but Trump wins, and it seems like the whole election cycle it's all Trump, Trump, Trump. Okay, that's fine. Believe me, if he wins, if Kasich wins, who to me is the worst candidate, he's going to get my vote, because the alternative, in my opinion, is suicide. I'm not going to do that. But at first I thought you were kind of doing that, and then I realized, well, you speak of what's in the news. And I don't know, maybe I'm wrong about this, but Cruz doesn't seem to need the help. He's so competent on his own, it almost seems like maybe really what's happening is you don't need to do anything for him. He stands, what he stands for. We have video. You can go to YouTube and listen to him speak. And though there's a few things he did that I disagreed with, I don't consider conservative, a few decisions he made, in the end, he's the closest to Reagan I've ever seen. I've never seen anybody like him before. In our time, it seems like everybody else is like McCain. I mean, the last two cycles I had to vote, I had to hold my nose when I voted.
Right.
And I feel a little bit that way about Trump, because I think Trump, I'm not saying he doesn't believe in everything he says, but when I hear deal, you mentioned him making a deal on his terms, and I'll agree that's what he means. He doesn't mean he's just going to, fold. But do you honestly believe, say, Nancy Pelosi or Harry Reid is going to move one iota on taxes, abortion, or say the military, national security?
Wait. Take abortion out, because that's a Supreme Court thing. We got rid of abortion as a legislative Democratic issue back in '73. So all abortion is a talking point. There won't be any deals on abortion. Maybe partial birth legislative, but throw that out. But I still get your point. Is Trump so good that Harry Reid or Pelosi, whoever it is going to give up and give in and let Trump have what he wants? And that's what you if you're supporting Trump, that's what you have to believe is going to happen. I mean, Trump is running a campaign. One of the reasons Trump's making news, and you can't avoid it, is it's so unorthodox. Nobody's ever run a campaign like this. Nobody's gotten away with saying things he says, and nobody has ever won without having a ground game. Nobody has ever. He's spending the least amount of money anybody out there, except for Ted Cruz in New Hampshire. Anyway, he's turning the whole system upside down. And believe me, the people that run this business hate this. They don't understand it. It would be no different than if somebody who's never watched a baseball game became president of a baseball team and won the World Series in the first year. They would hate the guy. They wouldn't want to imitate him. They wouldn't want to copycat. They'd want to throw him out of the league and make sure nobody ever heard from him again. You can't come in and win the World Series if you have never worked in baseball. And that's the way they're looking at Trump. Now, about Cruz and his being self-sufficient, there's no question about that. But here, let me just say something right off the bat, and I've said this before. I opened the program with it yesterday. When I saw what Jeb and Kasich were doing in New Hampshire at the last minute in order to get votes, they were going left as fast as Deion Sanders can backpedal. They were moving left faster than anybody I've ever seen go left. And I opened the program yesterday saying you will never, ever have to worry about that with Ted Cruz. And then I expanded on it. And let me say if conservatism is your bag, if conservatism is the dominating factor in how you vote, there is no other choice for you in this campaign than Ted Cruz. Because this is the closest in our lifetimes we have ever been to Ronald Reagan in terms of doctrinaire, understandable, articulated, implementable conservatism. There's nobody closer. But I think the electorate at this point in time, we don't know, Brian, if you look at Trump's coalition, there's a lot of assumptions being made about it because he's running as a Republican. And in the Republican primary, and it's assumed the Republican base is who's voting here. Therefore, it's assumed the majority of Trump's coalition is conservatives. And there are a lot. But he's broad-based. He's all over the spectrum. Look, I'm sounding like a broken record, but it's important to point out Trump has put together, whether by accident or by design, he's put together the coalition, group of people, demographics, ethnics, whatever you want to divide it and add it up. He's put together a group of people the Republican Party has been claiming for years that they have to do in order to win, and they don't want any part of it. So it obviously isn't about that. This is a club. This is about self-preservation. This is the ruling class trying to hold on. This is the ruling class practicing their exclusionary policies of not letting outsiders in. That's appealing to a lot of people about Trump. But if you're going to talk conservatism, let me mention something that happened in the last debate. Rubio was asked a question, can you define conservatism? What is it? And he defined it, and what are you frowning at? I'm not going to kill anybody. I'm just going to... I'm going to repeat what happened, and I'm going to kill people? Well, they're all saying, don't do it, don't do it. See, this is the pressure I am under on this program. You people would never know. Do you realize everybody who knows me can get to me, tells me what to do and not to do, or what I should have said or shouldn't have said? It's amazing I have a backbone of steel. Otherwise, I would have been in the funny farm 27 years ago. Now, here's the thing. Rubio got the question, and he gave a superb answer when asked to explain or define conservatism. Cruz did not get the question. They didn't let the question last long enough for all of the candidates to get it, but Trump did. And Trump's definition of conservatism was not an ideological definition of conservatism. My point all along was, one of my theories was demonstrated, but that Trump is not an ideological candidate. Trump's not a Republican. He's not a Democrat. He's running as a Republican, but he's way beyond any of this. His definition of conservatism was, well, we're going to conserve. We're going to conserve our money. We're going to conserve our whatever. And in his world, conservatism meant we're going to save our good stuff. We're going to save our assets. We're not going to waste. We're not going to throw things away, and so forth and so on. Donald Trump, and I've never said otherwise, Donald Trump is not an ideological candidate. He doesn't look, for example, at Chuck Schumer and see a screaming liberal. And by the same token, he doesn't look at Ted Cruz and see a screaming conservative. He sees people in entirely different ways. He looks at them in different ways. From his way of doing business, he looks at Schumer. I mean, I'd have to guess. I don't know. But he knows Schumer's a Democrat. But that doesn't matter. Is there something Schumer's good for as far as Trump's concerned? If there is, fine. Hi, Chuck, how you doing? If there's not, Chuck, don't bug me. The fact that Chuck may be a screaming leftist, that none of that matters. But he's that way with everybody. That's why Trump's circle of friends and associates is all over the place. He's not the only one. I mean, most people are not ideological in the way they look at things. This has been one of my major complaints, actually, in politics. I think it helped more people did understand liberalism and did understand what that means and were able to understand why it is liberalism that explains all this misery now. But in Trump's world, it's not liberalism, although it is. In Trump's world, they're just a bunch of incompetent failures. They're a bunch of time-wasting lumps of humanity that have no business doing what they're doing because they're losers. They're kitty cats, whatever they are, whether they're conservative or liberal or what have you. Most people live their lives that way. Most people do not run around and looking They go to church and looking over in the pews, yeah, there's the so-and-so family, bunch of commie bastard liberals. They don't say that. Now, it could be that the same people will go to church and see the so-and-so family. Yeah, those people are so right-wing, and that's a branding thing, which we've also discussed here on this program, some things that conservatism, i.e. Republican Party, needs to overcome problems they've allowed to have other people brand them, so forth. This is not a criticism of Trump. But if for those of you that conservatism's the answer and conservatism is the way, you have no choice here. Ted Cruz has got to be your guy. There's nobody even close. Nobody. The closest. No, I'm not even going to go there. We're about to get through this 3 hours relatively unscathed. I'll just leave it there. That's it. Now, look, Rubio people don't get mad at me. He's a conservative. I said it earlier. I'm not taking it back. I was thinking in going forward, Massachusetts results, if Rubio had done well, the establishment's going to try to glom on and claim credit and get behind Rubio. It's going to be a problem for some conservatives. And Cruz does not have the baggage of having the establishment behind him. That's all I meant by that. Now, one other thing about conservatives and the problems that we face, the reason why many conservatives think it's got to be Ted Cruz and we've got to be conservative because liberalism is the reason we're in this mess. We're not in this mess because of incompetence. We're in this mess because of liberalism. And there is an antidote to liberalism. There is a cure. There is a vaccine. It's called conservatism. Conservatism is what's going to have to be implemented here to reverse the direction we're headed. That's why people who are supporting Cruz are supporting Cruz. That's why conservatives get worried when other conservatives do not support a conservative. Because the problems we have are directly traceable to liberalism. And the antidote, the cure, the vaccine, the nuclear device to wipe it out is conservatism. And if you're scratching your head, I'll explain in greater detail tomorrow. Okay, remind me to expand on this tomorrow, but I'm going to tell you, I can see Donald Trump picking off a whole bunch of people who right now support Bernie Sanders, particularly young millennial women who hate Hillary. And I will explain this before you go off getting all whatever tomorrow. You be here.